Hey, Fearless Schools podcast listeners. I hope this episode of Fearless Schools finds you doing well and enjoying whatever it is you're doing while you're checking out today's show. You know, maybe you're driving to or from school, maybe you're walking your dog, maybe you're going for a brisk bike ride, maybe you're about to be launched into space. Whatever it is, whatever you're doing, you've made a wise choice by coupling it with another stellar activity, and that activity is, of course, listening to this podcast, the Fearless Schools podcast, brought to you by the letters C, L, and S. That's right, Creative Leadership Solutions. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm elated to be with you on this auditory traversal. That's right, Dr. Drew Tomlin, your Fearless Schools podcast host and current administrator with 30 plus years experience in the schoolhouse, and working shoulder to shoulder with me as always is CLS Director of Professional Learning, Dr. Ann McCarty. How are you, Dr. Ann?
Dr. Drew, I'm excited for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
One, we have a voice from the middle, like middle school advocate with us.
Yep.
But we also have someone who's consistently working with teachers, and I know she's going to give some awesome takeaways for our teachers who listen to the podcast today. Leaders as well, but she's got it locked in with teachers. So I'm excited.
Locked in. Locked in is the word.
Right.
You know, why not? Okay, today's podcast for me, it makes me think about an oscillating fan set to educational adventure and wonderment. And I'll tell you why, right? Because our guest, as you alluded to, is someone dedicated to dismantling the heavy manacles of boredom, right? And she does that with a combination of educational joy, whimsy, and just plain old moxie. It's true, right? So this educator knows a thing or two about busting educational stuff and about creating great schools in the marvelous middle grades. She has served in a variety of roles in education, including special education teacher, Title I teacher, instructional coach, and classroom teacher. She also presents to schools and at conferences around the country and has been featured as a speaker in, oh my gosh, just everywhere, right? It's hard to encapsulate it all. She's released 2 books. Her first book was Boredom Busters and then Frustration Busters. They both provide strategies to create engaging, memorable, and meaningful learning experiences for students. She currently travels the country and the galaxy as the director of middle level programs with the Association for Middle Level Education. That's right, AMLE. That's right. It is Katie Powell in the house. How's everything going, Katie?
Drew, are you out for hire to be like a hype man? Because that is definitely the strongest intro I've ever had. Thank you for that.
There you go. I'm hireable for anyone's party. There you go. How you doing? Thanks for being here.
Very good. Thanks for the opportunity. It's fun to get to hang out with both of you, especially since you're longtime friends thanks to the world of the middle school. So what a privilege it is to get to join you on your podcast now.
Yeah, it is nice when all those worlds come together, isn't it?
It is.
Goodness gracious. Well, speaking of warm feelings, we're going to get warmed up with a question that just goes straight to the heart of the matter, or rather the stomach of the matter. And that is, what's your go-to food in times of educational challenge or triumph?
Do you mean literal food, or are we talking food analogy like Drew Tomlin loves?
Oh, well, that's a dangerous question. I'm going to go literal, though, because you do tough work and you're on the road quite a bit, but you also get to spend time at home. So, food is a part of all of that.
Very definitely is. Yeah. I am going to pull an audible and answer with my favorite beverage of choice, because if anyone follows me on social media, they know my favorite pop in the whole wide world is Diet Sundrop.
Oh.
And it's regional. I can't get it at home. So when I'm on the road and I can find Diet Sundrop, man, I buy everything I can get it home with. And so, on driving trips, it's like, yes, I will fill the trunk with 5 cases of that. Thank you very much. So I'm still looking for sponsorship.
Wow.
I can't get them to pay attention to me. So if anyone has connections, I would love to be the Diet Sundrop girl.
Yeah. You know what? I think maybe Dr. John Hattie may have said something about Diet Sundrop too.
I think it has an effect size. I'm pretty sure it has an
Yes. It has yes, that is some visible learning right there.
I would add Katie likes sweets.
Yes. I'm a big fan of brownies.
And she likes cheeseburgers.
I do love a good cheeseburger. Yes.
That's a meal right there. We got the Diet Sundrop, we got the cheeseburger, and we got the brownie. So if those were placed all in front of you, that would just set you free.
Yeah, I'm a happy food dancer.
Ooh.
So when I get food in front of me and it makes me happy, I've got this little shoulder shimmy I do, and it's involuntary. I don't know I'm doing it until people start laughing at me. And then I realize the food has made me happy.
Listen, let your freak flag fly. Don't let them laugh at you, Katie. That's your burger. That's your meal. You enjoy it.
Thanks.
Goodness gracious.
Well, I do. Thank you.
All right. Well, speaking of things on your plate, obviously everyone's past is a part of what's on their plate.
Mhm.
So, you were once a student, not just, I know that you're a huge middle grades advocate and everything like that, but what kind of a student were you, whether elementary, middle, or high? Your origin story, like what kind of student were you, and who and what perhaps helped you learn on that early journey?
It's a good question. I think I was probably naturally good at school. I didn't always love it, but it's like I understood what was being asked of me and knew how to give the answers I needed to give. And I was curious and loved learning. So I was really motivated. I had a really great experience in third through sixth grade. I was in a gifted and talented program and had the same teacher those 4 years. And she had a huge influence on how I view education and learning. Feeling really seen as a student was really impactful. And she advocated for some kind of non-traditional academic access for me, where I got to kind of choose my own adventure a little bit more through high school courses that I started taking in middle school. And so I'm really indebted to Kathy Sourbeer. She really had a big impact on my education progress. But, by the time it came to figuring out what I was going to study in college, I was a little lost. I graduated high school early. I was 16 when I graduated high school, and I'd worked really hard. And, I did the things. I grew up in the era of where we were told, like, if you get good grades and work really hard, you can do anything you want to do. Mm-hmm. And then I started applying for college and realized that's if you have money. And my family did not. And so my ambition at that time was to study art at Savannah College of Art and Design.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to study either jewelry design or furniture design. And I had a sizable academic scholarship, but right before, literally days before I would move on to campus, my parents were like, yeah, we can't afford the remainder. We're going to have to figure something else out.
Oh, wow.
So last minute change in plans, I wound up at a small private college in Tennessee. When I sat down to do the enrollment paperwork, we were looking at the potential things I could study. And my very frustrated mother goes, teaching, that's a real job. You can do that one. So in the first day of teacher ed classes where we're going around the room and everyone's telling the story of when they knew they wanted to be a teacher, and everyone's got these inspiring origin stories. Right. They're like, I knew I wanted to be a teacher in kindergarten when I had Mrs. So-and-so and she changed my life forever. And I'm starting to sweat. I'm looking around and like doing the thing where you lean around and you look at other people, and it gets to me and I'm like, I knew I wanted to be a teacher yesterday when my mom made me check that box on the form. Like,
right. Oh my gosh.
You could hear the turning of the heads in the room where people are like,
right.
What? And I'm like, well, yeah. But, the thing I discovered, the program I was in had us doing one-on-one tutoring with students from the very beginning of college. So we were writing lesson plans and delivering them right away. And I very quickly fell in love with it. It's a puzzle, right? And where it takes this analytical mindset, but also this creativity and you being able to look at what's working with your student and what's not and why, and think about it divergently and everything. I loved every bit of that challenge, and it lit me up.
That's cool.
And I realized, all along I couldn't figure out what parts of me, I'd studied engineering all through high school, but I was going to study art in college, and I couldn't figure out how these seemingly disparate pieces of my nature and my personality fit together. And then I landed in teaching, where, man, it uses all of it all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And man, just fell in love from those beginning experiences.
That's really cool. What a robust journey that is. Wow. I didn't realize you had such the art background, and you said jewelry design and furniture design and stuff like that. Yeah. Was that something that you had a natural affinity for art, or was that something that you learned in school and it was cultivated in school through those non-traditional experiences?
Good question. Really, I think a lot of it was trying to find where my artistic nature and my I loved mechanical drawing and drafting, and trying to figure out how the two come together and the kind of design process that's involved in physical arts where you're using your hands and tools and making something.
Yeah.
I'm not especially talented as an artist. I'm not someone who drew these amazing pictures my whole life or anything like that. But I really enjoyed the overall creative process.
Right.
And I think that's what I gravitated to the most. I thought I would study engineering. I wanted to design roller coasters, and I did that engineering program all through high school. And if we did engineering in modern day as mechanical drawing, by hand, I probably would be an engineer today. But because it's computerized, I realized I hate CAD. And I was like, well, can't do that for the rest of my life.
Right.
So, I completed the engineering program in high school, but knew that wasn't what I wanted to do for a living.
Right.
So it was just a journey of trying to find where I fit.
Yeah. Obviously, like you said, your mom kind of pushed you into the educational
Mm-hmm.
realm by checking that box and whatever like that. Once you discovered the artful joy of teaching and education, did you ever go back and say, oh yeah, you were right?
I don't know that I could have the, oh, yeah, you were right conversation, because my mom didn't pick it for me because she thought it would be a good fit. She called it a real job.
There you go.
So, and it is,
Yeah.
So I guess I can tell her she was right about that, but none of us knew, trying to find where you fit as a student. That's part of why we encourage the exploratory experiences we do, that you don't know what you're into until you get to try things.
Yeah.
And, when I was a student going through school in small, rural, Midwestern schools, we had the kind of classic triad of you'd have some art, some music, some, physical activities. And I got into industrial arts in middle school. We had home ec, but there wasn't really a lot beyond that. So it wasn't until I was a little bit older and starting to step into like the collegiate experience and getting to see more of what's out there that I even realized some of what's available in the world.
That's cool.
Well, Katie, it kind of came full circle. You said you wanted to design roller coasters, and you ended up working in middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah, there may be something to that, right?
You were writing and designing roller coasters as you were teaching middle school students, right?
That is true. That is true.
I've always loved the thrill, the excitement, the adventure. And you work with middle schoolers, no 2 days are ever the same. You'll be in 25 minutes into an ELA lesson and a kid pulls a spoon out of their pocket and offers it to you. And you're like, what? Where is this? And they're like, I don't know. I just had a spoon. Like, the world of middle school, it's just who they are. And I loved every minute of it.
Yeah. Do you see like them as kindred spirits to who you are or who you were back in those same grades? Like, oh yeah, I was just like this. Or
in some ways, I think what I see in students, when I was a student going through school was much more one size fits all. And if you didn't fit the pattern of school, then it was really just assumed that school isn't for you.
Right.
And we do a much better job now of recognizing that it's our job as educators and school leaders to craft the experiences that meet our students' needs instead of trying to fit them into boxes.
Yeah.
So when I consider that core, like what do I recognize about myself and my own experience as a student in the students I've served, it really is that gratitude that we do better now. We differentiate instruction and we personalize to learning needs, and we understand, the difference between compliance and engagement. And, it's a different system than it used to be. And we do a better job centering on student needs rather than adult needs. So I'm grateful that they get a different experience as a student than I had.
Yeah. Was that like, was that kind of the inspiration behind Boredom Busters? You were like, you had seen maybe some of the boredom that had happened in schools, either yourself or in the students that you were serving, and you were ready to just bust that. I don't know, like what was that? Was that part of it? And also with Boredom Busters, like, talk to us about that.
Well, indirectly. So the teacher ed program I was in college, your sophomore year, you would interview to officially be in the program. And I remember during that portfolio interview process, the panel asking me if I wanted to teach students like myself, meaning gifted, driven, creative kids. And I hadn't considered that question before. And I remember telling them no, that I was going to learn even if no one was teaching me. I was curious. I was a member of the teen advisory board of my local library. Like I was going to find the answers to the questions, even if no one taught them to me.
There you go.
I realized in that moment that I was committed to bringing any talent and expertise I could cultivate professionally to the students who weren't going to just find the answers on their own.
Yeah.
And my first professional teaching experience, I was a mid-year hire as a special education teacher, 7th grade special ed.
That's a tough assignment.
Because it is. And the experiences, I don't know all the nitty-gritty details about what had happened, but a teacher who had held the position before me had been fired. So I inherited students who had some pretty negative experiences. And, by 7th grade, students have kind of defined themselves as a student, as a learner, as a human being in some ways.
Yeah.
And watching students feel like they aren't learners and school isn't for them, man, I became extremely driven to do whatever it took to change that narrative. And it's not that I somehow brought some magic that changed that. It's about we as the educators can decrease the barriers that they're experiencing so that they can come alive, that they can light up, that they can experience that for themselves.
Right.
And that was really the big motivator behind the work of Boredom Busters was, there are some kids who were like me and they're going to show up and they're going to do school.
Right.
But what about those kids that's not working for? How do we meet their needs? But then the other side of the origin story of Boredom Busters was, as a special education teacher, my time was split between teaching in my own classroom and supporting my students in my colleagues' classrooms.
Right.
So developing those co-teaching relationships with my colleagues, getting to see how many different ways there is to teach and to teach well. And it's not a singular standardized thing. And realizing that what I was comfortable doing to step out of the box and engage my students wasn't what was going to be appropriate for all of my colleagues. That we all have this zone of proximal development, just like our learners do. And, that one step out of the comfort zone looks different for each of us. So it was kind of this like reverse engineering of what are the things that are working for me and what would it look like to scale that back to someone who's really more comfortable with worksheets and the teacher's edition of the textbook. So kind of that scalable journey there so that, my colleagues could find themselves in that experience too.
Gosh, that is really powerful because oftentimes we think of differentiation or differentiated strategies as how they apply to students that we serve.
Yeah.
But you're talking about like that obviously there are staff members who work with kids directly that also, need to have some differentiation in how things are done. So that's important to learn. If there was one boredom busting strategy that you come back to again and again, or just particularly sings to you, what would that strategy be besides being on a great podcast? What's another strategy?
Well, it's always hard to pick one, but I usually start folks with paper airplanes because it is just so easy to deploy. And that's really the point of the Boredom Busters. There are so many engagement strategies out there. I'm not the only person out there being like, here's some fun engagement ideas. There are a lot of really great voices in that space. So the niche I kind of found myself in was, how can we take like the worksheet a teacher would already be using and just deploy it differently? You're not having to create new materials. You're not having to prep extra stuff. Just literally that worksheet you're handing out to students, let's hand it out differently. And so with paper airplanes, the whole premise is that students get their own worksheet. They put their name at the top, they do a problem. And then you stop everyone, they turn their worksheet into a paper airplane and launch it around the room. And then they're going to get someone else's. They're going to be able to see the answers their peers are putting down on these questions. That gives them some soft feedback along the way about their own thinking, and exchange answers and share that thinking. They're getting a little gross motor movement, but it's in a super boundaried way. They're just throwing paper airplanes and picking them up off the floor. Yeah. So not the potential to like descend into madness. And then at the end, the experience of getting their original worksheet back and having all of these answers, that helps address a couple of things that tend to be barriers to students really engaging. Yeah. One is the blank page. For many students, that whole idea of I have to produce an answer ex nihilo, like out of nothing, I have to come up with something. That's really intimidating and discouraging to a lot of students. Through this process, they're working one question at a time. It feels playful, so it doesn't feel as, heavy. Yeah. And then when they get their worksheet back, it's already full of answers. So they're not starting from a blank page, but then also that process then of evaluating the answers they've received, proving it right, proving it wrong, solving it a different way. What page number did you find it on? Define that vocab term, like providing that justification. That's deeper. We're making the brain sweat more. Yeah. We're increasing the rigor. We're upping the DOK. And so although it feels playful, it won't feel like heavy seat work. What we're really doing is actually making their brains work harder. Yeah. But so often those barriers for students, they kind of weigh this equation of how much effort would I have to put in and what is my risk of failure in it? And if there's going to have to be effort with a risk of failure, many kids just won't try. Mm-hmm. So when we, in a way, kind of hide that sweaty brain work inside something playful, it won't feel like they're having to work as hard. Right. So that equation comes out a little bit more successfully. They're a little more willing to try.
Yeah, and when I think of sweaty brain work, I think middle school stank. So you want you want to make sure when you're doing that sweaty brain work, they got some good deodorant like around the corner. What would you say? Okay, so with that, what would you say to, not to paint with a broad stroke, but you might hear this
Mhm.
argument from some, let's say high school folks that say, oh, well, those
Mhm.
strategies are fun and everything. I'm not sure if they fit into what I'm trying to do here with these upper grades. They're not going to get them ready for the real world. What would you say to that?
I would have a few things to say to
Oh,
that.
keep it clean. Keep it clean, Kate. It's a family
Oh,
show. Family show.
yeah, absolutely. You know me as a human being. We're not going to veer too far off the cleanliness table here. So, the reality is when I do paper airplanes with adults at conference sessions, there's this phenomenon that happens, and it has happened literally every single time. Like sometimes people are coming to my session because they chose to be at my session. They want to come hear me. Other times the school has hired me and made everybody come.
Hmm.
And there are people in the room who don't want to be there. And yet, every single time when we do paper airplanes, there's this moment when people adults toss their paper airplane for the first time. And there's this kind of like, whoo, that happens around the room.
Right.
People smile, they laugh, they're lit up, and there's this sound that happens. And when I draw their attention to it, I'm like, listen, we're professional adults. We famously complain about having to get up out of our seats and move during PD.
Right.
And yet you had this experience in your body that elicited this involuntary response out of you. If we benefited from that, don't you think our child human beings would benefit from that? And y'all, let's face it, like a 17, 18-year-old kid is still very much a kid developmentally.
Yeah.
That brain and body is still in such flux and development that they still need these experiences. The brain being wired to learn through play has not ended just because they're no longer a child in elementary school.
Yeah.
But I think another thing that I would remind folks of is that our current students, especially those in adolescence, whether early or late adolescence, continue to name stress, anxiety, and depression as their primary barriers to learning.
Oh, yeah.
Not just life experiences, but barriers to learning.
Yeah.
And if we pay attention to the way the amygdala and prefrontal cortex work, where you're feeling stress in your brain, when that part of your brain is lit up, the part of your brain that is attentive and forming long-term memories is not turned on.
Yeah.
So if we have students who are coming to us with stress, anxiety, depression, some of these experiences, they're less likely to be able to form lasting memories. They could sit down and do a worksheet, but if their brain isn't engaged, if they're not lit up, are they likely to remember a single thing from that experience? No. It's brain science.
Yeah.
So these playful experiences, man, they light the brain up. Our students are more likely to remember, and it helps. We feel better. Y'all, dopamine is a really good thing. Not just because we feel better as human beings in our own skin, but actually when we talk about learning, what we're talking about is brain chemistry. And it just so happens that the brain chemistry that is most conducive to attention and memory is the brain chemistry of happiness.
Yeah.
So when we foster happiness in our classrooms, we're actually supporting really meaningful learning. And that doesn't end just because a kid got a little bit older and their body got a little bit bigger.
Yeah. So like these engaging strategies are akin to like you finding Diet Sundrop along the way. It's going to light you up. So that's really good advice, because I think it's important to remember too. Well, this takes me to my next question, or our next question. That is, a lot of this work is kind of focused on the arena of teachers, and what they can do differently in their classrooms. But how does this translate to, school leaders and administrators when they do their work in schools? Like how does this boredom busting translate to their work?
Yeah, great question. And I think one of the things that's important for instructional leaders in buildings to remember is that differentiation we referenced, that's not just something we're asking a math teacher to do for the 7th grade students in their room, but instructional leaders need to be cognizant of that for the educators that they serve as well. That you could have 2 teachers in the same subject area, the same number of years of experience, but very different teaching styles. And this idea that teaching is the singular thing, that you should walk into 2 classrooms of the same grade level and same subject area at the same time of day and see exactly the same thing, discredits the art, the creativity, and the humanity of our profession. And when you've got a professional educator who knows their students and is paying attention to the needs of those kids, then they're going to be responsive to those needs in a way that works for them and works for the students. Yeah. And that diversity is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So I think I would encourage instructional leaders to be cognizant of that. Instead of pushing to standardize our profession, we can be reaching common goals through different routes. That art is going to look different person to person, and that's okay. So paying close attention to each teacher's zone of proximal development and what would one step toward what you're looking for out of them be. But then the other layer of that, I think, would be for us to remember that the classroom management of instruction, what we're often pushing for is compliance.
Yep.
We want students to do what an adult tells them to do, when they tell them to do it, how they told them to do it, etc. And there's a place for compliance. I have to be compliant to renew my license plates. I have to be compliant to complete my taxes. Those aren't things I'm actively engaged in for the most part, but I need to do them.
Yeah.
So compliance has a place. But again, going back to brain science, compliance doesn't necessarily require the brain to be lit up. So students may not be learning anything from that work. So you're putting time and attention into crafting a lesson, and students are putting time and attention into doing it, but is it getting us anywhere? So I would encourage instructional leaders to not end the story with what, educators want, with what they're expecting of educators, with what they're looking for in walkthroughs, with what we're asking of students, to end with compliance. But instead, we need to be lit up. What does engagement look like, feel like, sound like? How do we foster those experiences in our room? And if you've worked with modern students, that's even harder than it used to be. There are some generational qualities of our current generations of students where they're a little harder to motivate and engage than they used to be. So this isn't about someone standing in judgment and defining a teacher as a bad teacher because their students are hard to engage, but let's work with the science of the psychology and the chemistry of learning. Let's equip teachers with those strategies, and let's teach students how their brains work and why we're doing the things like, the whole pay no attention to the man behind the curtain and Oz. Let's pull the curtain back and explain exactly what's going on and give them some agency over this too. When you don't understand what's happening in your brain and body, especially when you're in adolescence and all of it's changing all the time anyway, and you're a little bit like, that alien in Men in Black who's like wearing a human suit, and you're like, they don't feel at home in their own self. And so we can demystify some of that and explain what's happening to them and why we make the choices we do as the professional educators. Like, agency doesn't mean putting students in the driver's seat of their learning, because we wouldn't give 12-year-olds keys and send them driving in cars. We are the professional educators. We still need to be driving the vehicle, but we can bring students alongside us and they can be sitting in that passenger seat with the atlas out and a highlighter and be talking about what they want to see and how they want to get there. And we can be doing that together.
And this, it's interesting when you mentioned driving, it made me go to that metaphor. Like, it's okay to have guardrails on the road. Guardrails don't communicate necessarily that everybody has to drive the same path, or drive the same way, or drive the same car, or have the same junk in the trunk. Like, it's okay, but guardrails are necessary to keep us from going completely off the rails. What you've mentioned to me, and it goes back to your love of art, is the difference between the art of teaching and the artifice of teaching.
Oh, nice.
There you go. So, like,
I like what you did there, Drew.
Thank you. Because where do you see, is that, okay, this takes me to my next question, because obviously being a superhero with an origin story, and you are a superhero, what superpowers do you have that make you do your work well? And just brag on yourself, because I'm going to ask the opposite question in a minute. So what are your superpowers?
Well, Drew, it's hecka uncomfortable to try to applaud myself here. But I did have my students evaluate me multiple times a year, starting back before teacher evaluation was even a thing. I realized they're the primary consumers of my work. They know what I'm doing better than anyone else does. So if I want to know how I'm doing as a teacher, I better be asking my kids. And in the feedback I got from students over the years and the various roles I've had in classrooms, one of the things I think that has mattered most to me to hear from them is that I saw them. And whether that meant I saw what they needed academically, or I saw them as a human being and allowed the space for them to be a person. If there's anything I can be proud of, if students felt like I saw them, that's something I can be proud of.
That's cool. Right.
Katie, you're not our first guest that's had kind of an answer like that. But I think if we go back to your teacher, I can't remember.
Miss Sourbear.
Mrs. Sourbear, yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. That was the thing that you said about her. She saw you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And this is a lot of our guests that they felt seen, and that was they wanted kids to feel seen as well. And Drew, you've talked a lot about that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And Katie, tell us how that transfers into the work you do with the middle school.
Yeah. So, a quirk of development in early adolescence is that many students find themselves feeling simultaneously invisible and on display. They feel like no one sees them, no one knows them, no one understands what their experience is. And yet they can be walking down the hall and see two people laughing and be sure they're laughing about them. The sense that no one sees me and everyone's looking at me all at the same time.
Yep.
And one of the things I've really encouraged when we talk about the importance of belonging and relationship, that sense of emotional safety in middle school, is that matters so that we are good human beings to each other, but that also matters for learning. The process of learning requires so much vulnerability. Students are reading aloud in front of each other. They're going over work in front of each other. They're working out problems on the board. And that means I could make mistakes in front of people. And are they going to handle that gently? Am I going to be respected in that? Am I brave enough to risk that? And, if you were to walk down the street of any town and ask grown adults, even like very professional adults, how comfortable are you reading aloud in front of other people? Like very few of them are going to be like, oh yeah, that's my favorite thing in the world. Like, that vulnerability is uncomfortable even for professional adults. And we're asking 12-year-olds who are like, did I wear deodorant today? And, am I wearing the cool enough clothes? And do I fit in with other people? We're asking them to be in that place of vulnerability all day. And that's a tall order. And, so I think this idea of why so many of us would resonate with the idea of being seen is that what we're communicating in that statement is both sides of that coin being honored. We were safe enough to be ourselves and someone saw who we really are. And that communicates both that safety and that visibility. And that requires spaces that let students explore who they are so they can be seen and can know who they really are and be recognized as such.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. The superpower, I think that I'm just going to name it. The superpower you possess is like a supervision. And I don't mean that from supervision, like supervising.
I was just gonna say, like hallway duty?
No. What I mean,
doesn't sound very fun, Drew.
No.
What I mean is simultaneously, and this is hard to do, you see students for who they are right now, but then you also see them for who they have the potential to be in the future. It's like that adage of seeing David in the stone, right?
Yeah.
Like able to see the potential of something before it's actually happened. But then, because a lot of times people treat middle school students like, oh, I'm preparing them for the future,
right?
Instead of seeing them for who they are right now and valuing that.
Yes.
I think that's a really cool gift that you have. So on the flip side of that coin, what's your kryptonite? What challenges you to the point of just like, oh?
Would you like that answered from my classroom experience or my current experience?
Dr. Ann, what do you think?
Can we get a twofer?
A twofer.
Okay, buy one, get one free.
Well, okay. So with my current experience, my kryptonite is my relationship with time. And I know I'm not alone in this boat either, that I'm someone who's driven to bring excellence to everything I do, but often have a plate so full of things that I might not even get to everything, let alone be able to give it excellence. And I drive myself nuts with that and find myself losing joy in things that I should be able to just stay present in the moment and enjoy. So my kryptonite is my relationship with time. That's professional, that's personal, it's all of the above. It's, if you look at my personal goals over the last several years, that's always on there is me. I used to call it balance, but I've realized that's not it, because balance insinuates that it's this proportional relationship between two things, and our lives aren't binary like that.
Yes.
So my current analogy, it's like, the My Plate diagram about healthy eating. It's like that. Your time requires, like, you've got your professional time and you've got your like family time, and then you might have like your social group and like what's your decompressed like self time. Like a healthy plate would have, portions of all of the above. And sometimes there's a little more of one and a little less of others, but we have to have all the things.
Yes.
So I'm not looking for balance anymore. I'm looking for a healthy plate.
Yeah, and I like how you brought it around to food. That's so nice.
I thought you'd appreciate that, Drew.
I did. Well, as
it needs to have a brownie, a French fry, a burger, and a Diet Squirt.
Diet Squirt.
We're good then.
The Sun Drop.
Squirt's another good one. That's Squirt's a grapefruit soda. It's also lovely. It does not have caffeine though. And y'all, if I'm gonna run on caffeine and enthusiasm, I've got to have the pep every now and then.
Well, listen, we appreciate you putting pep in our step today and busting our boredom. That's for sure. But listen, thanks for being here and bringing your insights. Oh, wait, Dr. Ann. Yes?
I asked for a twofer, Drew.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me pump the brakes.
And then I have one last question to bring us
Dang,
home.
go ahead, Dr. Ann. Twofer.
Well, I guess, yeah, the classroom answer, like back in my teaching experience, I think in some ways time still, because a teacher can have 99 wins in a day and one loss and go home feeling that one loss way more than the 99 wins.
Yeah.
And I know why we do. Those are human beings we serve all day. So that one loss, that was a person, so we go home and we carry that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was part of it. But then also, there's a balance educators, especially those of us who are highly relational in nature, have, where trying to see and appreciate each kid for who they are and give them that space in the classroom, not detract or diminish from the depth of the academic work that needs to happen. And, always striking in what moments do we need to stand in this space and just be human beings together? And in what moments is it like, there's a do now on the board and we've got things we've got to accomplish and I've got 45 more minutes in which to do them.
Yep.
So it honestly probably is the same answer. It probably just manifested a little bit different in those classroom times and spaces.
Yeah. No, I think that's a delicate balance that we always have to deal with, is like how you prioritize time. And then, yeah, that's a tough one. Goodness gracious. Okay. Ann, you said you had a question to bring us home.
Okay. This is a part A and a part B. Sorry, Drew. It's actually two questions.
Why would you apologize? Go ahead.
I'm really not sorry. All right, Katie, anything hot or like that our listeners should hear from AMLE?
Well, the world of middle school, I'll tell you, I just had a conversation today with a representative of Department of Education at a state here in the U.S., who was telling a story that I found myself nodding along to. And she's like, I see you nodding. You must hear this a lot. I said, yes, I hear this a lot. And what is a common lived story right now is that graduation rates, portrait of a graduate work, those kinds of things may be improving after some focus and some effort and some funding has been put that way. And, a school or a state may find themselves with like early reading proficiency rates coming up, and, we're seeing success there. And then you look at middle school and you look at the achievement scores, the attendance rates, et cetera, discipline data around middle school, and it might look messier. And there's this tendency to kind of point the finger at the middle school and go, what are you doing wrong? And so I think if there's a message, the world of middle school, honestly, the world of education, because people make decisions for middle school who aren't middle school people. So we need to be telling the story that when you serve kids and adolescents, they're in a stage of flux themselves. So we are making deposits that might not bear fruition until much later in their life. There's correlation between a student's sixth grade experience and their graduation likelihood.
Yeah.
So what we're doing in middle school, you might not see the dividends while they're in middle school, but it doesn't make the work we're doing less valid. It makes it all the more critical.
Right.
So the other thing would be to remember the complications and challenges of this generation, just how heavy and how hard that is. When you have a student who for the very first time might be realizing that they're being abused and might just for the first time be putting language to that, and we're asking them to solve systems of equations and conjugate verbs. When you've got a kid who's like, I don't know how I see myself and how I want to be known by other people, whether it's, what pronoun they want to use, or whether they've been like the travel baseball kid their whole life and they realize they don't like baseball anymore. This identity exploration, and we're having them solve systems of equations and conjugate verbs. I think we need to increase the sensitivity, rehumanize the experience. Adolescence was so uncomfortable for most of us that you could not pay us a sum of money to go back to it.
Yeah.
So let's stay sensitive to just how hard this stage of life is. It's also amazing. And, a student who came to class with a potato named King Felipe III. And King Felipe III got work and answered questions for 3 weeks until it started to get really smelly. So the world of middle school is also amazing. Yep. So let's, again, it's the respect and the trust of those professional educators and the support they need. There's typically less funding for the world of middle school. There's less of an understanding that you might staff a middle school differently. You might plan its school day differently. You might have an advisory period that maybe you don't need at the elementary. Maybe the high school doesn't do it, but you need it at the middle school. To give middle schools the agency to meet students' needs, because it matters. These are deposits we're making in their current experience, but also their ongoing experience as human beings. It's very critical work, and we got to trust the middle school people to do it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so eloquently said. Like I felt like literally you were on a platform, like saying that's so
It might
great.
be a soapbox right now, Drew.
And why not? No, I mean that really sang to me. Like the word deposit's not to make education about a transaction, but in some ways, if we don't make deposits into young adolescents' emotional bank accounts, then when life makes those withdrawals, it's harder and harder for them to recover. So we have to put those deposits in.
If something matters, we invest in it, and they matter. So we're going to invest in them.
Absolutely. Goodness gracious. Well, and any other questions that you have? I mean,
no, that was she dropped.
Mic dropped.
It's gone. It's done.
Goodness gracious, you earned the Diet Sun Drop trophy of the century. Listen. Thank you once again for bringing your insights and educational skills to the Fearless Schools podcast. Just thank you so much, Katie. Our listening audience was saddled up and galloping on their steady steeds on a pedagogical range, but they were looking for a bright sunlight to shine the way forward, and you did that. You did that today. So giddy up for that awesome work. Fearless Schools podcast listeners, you know what you did. You did it, right? You took time out of your listening lives to check out another Fearless Schools podcast brought to you by the Creative Leadership Solutions. And you got to be proud of yourself. You really should, right? So pat yourself on the back. Go to www.creativeleadership.net. Subscribe to it, and while you're hunting around the internet, go get Boredom Busters, see what Katie Powell AMLE is all about. Why not, right? And check it out. Share your knowledge with peers and people around the street, and pen pals and pals without pens and all that kind of good stuff, and whoever you are, right? So Dr. Drew Tomlin, host of the Year of Fearless Schools podcast, wishing you well and saying stay fearless on the bright road ahead. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you, Dr. Ann.
Well, thank you, Drew and Ann.
Thank you.